go. Hi, buddy. Let's see if we've got all of our streaming set up here. Make sure it's looking good. I think everything is good. If you're watching and you can hear me, say hi in the chat. Hope you're all doing well. It is Thursday. Oh my gosh, Thursday already. This has been a wild week, y'all. It feels like we've had about 2 weeks in this week. Hiya, Bear Hugs. Good to see you. Glad you're here. Yeah, it feels like this week has been a lot of weeks all in one. I don't know if you all feeling that. But it's Thursday. I just got back from a trip to Nebraska, which was a wild thing to try to do when we're all trying to social distance and quarantine. But I did my best. I drove down there for an event that didn't get canceled in time, so we ended up doing the whole thing online, which was good. But I did it all from online in Nebraska and then drove back, very carefully stopping one time on the way home so I didn't accidentally spread or get any germs. So tried to do it as responsibly as possible. But it's so good to see people wanting to learn more about how to be affirming church congregations, even in the middle of a pandemic. How great is that? So even in the middle of what seems like the world is ending sometimes, people tuned in because they wanted to learn how to be better allies and to practice allyship in a good way. And so that was really exciting. Yeah. Bear Hug says, the apocalypse, it happens every week. No big deal. Yeah, that's a little bit, I don't know about you, but it's like, I'm getting to the point now where it's like I'm still kind of weirded out and in shock about how different things are right now, but at the same time, it's almost like some of it almost already feels like old. You know, like I know some of the folks that have been self-isolating for the past like week and a half are like, I'm about ready to be done self-isolating now. So yeah, some of it feels old even though it's still very new. I heard something on a podcast yesterday as I was driving home that I thought was pretty insightful. This podcast host was talking about how we can get like really addicted to scrolling through social media and through news right now because we're like looking for more information, right? But in reality, like as much as we're trying to do things and as much as it's important to stay up to date with what's going on, there isn't like some of it is just time. It's like some of this is just like we have to sit and wait. And the host of the podcast said, I didn't realize till I sat and thought about it that what I was looking for was sort of assurance that it was all going to be okay in the end. And that's not something that anybody can really give us right now. And I thought about that and I was like, that's true. But also, I think that's where like faith and religion can kind of come in, right? Like I don't want to be flippant and say like that, obviously that, suffering doesn't matter because it definitely does. And I don't want to say that this isn't really terrible because it is. But at the same time, I think one of the things that faith gives us is a sense that in the end, and sort of like the ultimate end at the end, it's going to be okay. And I was thinking about this week, the past couple of days, I was thinking about Julian of Norwich, who was actually, do I have her book right here? Here it is, right here. This is Julian of Norwich's book, Revelations of Divine Love. I was thinking about her recently because she said something very similar about it being okay in the end. Julian wrote she lived through the Black Death, so she lived through the plague, and she wrote, I think it's officially like the first written book in English written by a woman that we still have. So she's pretty amazing. But she said something about things being all right, and I thought maybe I would read that to you all. Ooh, Bear Hug says the 100% what I'm looking for and waiting for is the news to drop that they have a vaccine. Yeah, that's also like that's part of like wanting it to be okay, right? To feel like somebody has found some magic cure that'll help. Not that vaccines are magic; vaccines are very much a real thing. Um, but yeah, it's that sense of like waiting for the good news, waiting for somebody to have some kind of breakthrough, right? Um, so I want to read this bit from Julian of Norwich, and I put it in the if you're somebody who's in our transmission Discord group, you might have seen it already there. If you're not part of our transmission Discord group and you are a transgender or gender expansive person, we'd love to have you over there. You can find out more about that on our website, which is in the description below. Anyways, so Julian of Norwich, she said, hold on. All right. So Julian, the whole thing that she wrote, this book, is it's called Revelations of Divine Love, because she experienced a revelation where she sort of heard God and saw God and Jesus specifically speaking to her. And so she writes about her experience of that happening, right? And even though today I think we're all a little bit like, we don't know how we feel about the idea of revelations to individuals in modern times, or sort of modern times, I still think her story is a really, really interesting one. So she talks about God, about Jesus talking to her. And she says, in one vision, Jesus tells her, "You shall not be overcome." And so she's talking about this idea of not being overcome. She says, "This teaching and the true comfort applies without exception to all my fellow Christians. It is God's will that it should be so. And these words, 'You shall not be overcome,' were said to me very loudly and clearly for security and comfort against all the tribulations that may come. He did not say, 'You shall not be tormented, you shall not be troubled, you shall not be grieved,' but he said, 'You shall not be overcome.' Jesus answered with this assurance, 'All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well.' I thought it quite impossible that everything should turn out well, as our Lord was now showing me, but I had no answer to his revelation save this: 'What is impossible to you is not impossible to me. I shall honor my word in every respect and make everything turn out for the best.' This I was taught by God's grace, to hold steadfast to the faith I had already learned, and at the same time to believe quite seriously that everything would turn out all right, as our Lord was now showing me." So I wanted to share that sort of quote from Julian because it's such a nice, like, the idea that she's sort of in conversation with Jesus, and she says, like, how can, first of all, she's like, "You shall not be overcome." Okay, well, that doesn't mean bad things won't happen. It just means it's not going to be the end, right? You will not be totally drowned by this. And then Jesus says, "All shall be well." And she says, "I have no idea how that could be possible." And I think sometimes we also feel that way. Like, I have no idea how everything could be well. But she kind of comes to the point where she says, you know what? Things are possible with God that aren't possible with humans. And just because I don't understand it doesn't mean it can't be true. And that gave her some measure of comfort. And so I thought maybe we could also take that measure of comfort from somebody else going through a pandemic. So I thought I'd share that. Yeah, Bear Hugs points out that if Norwich is in the UK, which it is, where Julian lived, then they pronounce it Norwich, which is a pretty great pronunciation. I know, I'm giving it the old English spin there, or old American spin, I suppose I should say. So, having shared that, I just thought I would share Julian's thoughts for us today because I thought it might be helpful. I thought I would also read us a bit of a psalm, and Micah Melody, who is our program coordinator at TMC, she's been giving us a psalm to sort of think about in the Discord server every day. And the psalm that they chose today was Psalm number 16. So I thought I'd read that to us, and we can think a little bit about Psalm 16 and the psalmist talking about asking for protection, but also the psalmist talks about rejoicing in God's presence. So I'm going to read through this for us. This is Psalm 16. "Protect me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord, and I have no good apart from you. As for the holy ones in the land, they are the noble, in whom is all my delight. Those who choose another God multiply their sorrows. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out or take their names upon my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places, and I have a goodly heritage. Bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I keep the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand. I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad and my soul rejoices. My body also rests secure. For you do not give me up to Sheol, or let your faithful one see the pit. You show me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore. So, Psalm 16, it's sort of at the same time a song to God about like faithfulness to God, and at the same time it's a song about the faithfulness of God to the psalmist, right? And the thing that I get so much out of this psalm, and you all tell me if you have things that came like popped out to you, but the thing that always gets me about this psalm is this idea that the psalmist says in verse 8, I keep the Lord always before me. He is at my right hand. I shall not be moved. Therefore, my heart is glad and my soul rejoices. And then in the last verse, he says, show me the path of life. In your presence, there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore. And the sense that like the psalmist rejoices in God's presence. And because God is everywhere, God is always before you, always at your right hand, then you can always be rejoicing. And I was thinking about that today, the idea of knowing that it's like the idea of rejoicing in God's presence makes sense to us. And then the idea of God being everywhere makes sense to us. But the idea that we could be rejoicing all the time because God is everywhere is like, they're like two lines that we don't connect very often, or two dots we don't connect very often. That God is everywhere, and that can mean that we're rejoicing all the time. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that we can't also mourn. The psalmist does plenty of mourning. We can't also complain. The psalmist does plenty of complaining in Psalms. But I think the idea of rejoicing in the fact that God is always here, God is always with us, is something that, I don't know, for me it just felt like two dots. It's like you can like always rejoice because God is here, and God is always here, which means you can always rejoice. I don't know, somehow those dots never connected for me until I was thinking about this psalm. And the idea of, I think sometimes we think about Christianity specifically as a very anti-pleasure sort of religion. And the idea that the psalmist says, in your presence there is fullness of joy, in your right hand are pleasures forevermore. The idea that the psalmist is very much like, no, this is a good thing. And it's not just like the psalmist talks about, his heart, and he talks about his body. He talks about his sort of soul or breath. All those things are part of the psalmist. And so I don't feel like pleasure in terms of all of those pieces of himself would be a foreign thing either. So anyways, psalm for the day. Just thought I'd share. So I think we'll maybe light some candles now, and then we'll maybe do a response prayer. I was thinking about other ways to do response prayers recently. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all a refrain to say back, and then I will say sort of I will give the verses sort of the prayer, and then you all can say the response. But before we do that, why don't we light some candles? This has been something that I've been really enjoying doing with you all over the past week or so. Lighting candles for our sort of prayer requests and the people and the situations that we want to keep in our hearts and our minds, not just as individuals, but also as a community. So why don't we do that? I don't have my official lighter candle here that I was using before, so I'm going to have to use a different candle. But that's okay. So while I'm lighting this, if there are any situations or people that you would like prayer for, let us know, let me know in the chat, and we will light a candle for them. I am going to start out by lighting a candle for all the folks who are experiencing increase in anxiety, which is, I think, most of us. But has been such a spike in anxiety, I know, for me, for many of the people that I'm close to over the last week. And so, prayers for all the people experiencing anxiety, and prayers for peace and for groundedness, and for some deep breaths when we forget that we haven't breathed in a while. Let's see, who else should we pray for? I'm going to pray for all the teachers as more and more schools are out right now, and maybe even for the rest of the year, around the country and around the world. So a prayer for all the teachers that are the teachers that are trying to figure out how to do internet stuff, the teachers that are overwhelmed by thinking about trying to keep on track with these sort of guidelines for education, all the teachers that are overwhelmed and are not sure what they're doing and are still doing their best. So prayers for teachers. All right, prayer for Bear Hugs here. Bear Hugs says, I've started to get a sore throat and I'm genuinely going crazy in isolation. And also a prayer for my folks. So let's do a prayer for Bear Hugs and for all their family. And all the people that are going a little bit stir crazy right now, a little bit feeling a little bit like they need to see other people and they need to go outside. I hope you're finding ways to see people, even if it's not in person. And I hope you're finding ways that you can go outside, get some fresh air once in a while. But a prayer for Bear Hugs and for all of your family. Let's see. So Bear Hugs also says for local support groups. I know lots have started to form in my area. So pray that they can be safe and organized and helpful. Yeah, that's a great idea. So for all of the other support groups out there, support for parents and support for folks that are in recovery, and I'm trying to think of like all the other good support groups, so many good support groups, but that you can find ways to be organized and together without too much stress, that you can all find each other, and for people to not be afraid to reach out. Let's see, who else? I think maybe I would like to pray for all of the people that are making difficult decisions right now, especially people in leadership positions. I know I've been listening to reports from the governor of my state, Minnesota, and I was listening earlier to the update from the governor of North Dakota. So all these leaders that are trying to make the best choices, and knowing that like you can't please everybody, somebody's always going to be upset. And for like many people are upset for good reasons. It's just that we don't really see any other way forward at the moment. So prayers for all the leaders making difficult decisions. So if you're somebody who's watching and you want to put a prayer request in the chat, you are more than welcome to. We are lighting candles for all of our prayer requests, all the things that we want to keep in our minds and in our hearts during this time. Bear Hug says, I was just trying to write in leaders. Good. Gosh, who else? Who else would we like to hold in prayer? Ooh, I think I'm going to do one for both hospital workers and all of our healthcare workers, but also for all of our mental health care workers. I know many folks doing mental health care are moving to doing it online, which is great. We need you during this time. All of the people that do care for the body and for the mind, that they may have the tools that they need to do their job well, that they may have the wisdom that they need, that they may have good rest in the time when they're not working, because this must be exhausting for them. So a prayer for all the healthcare workers. Let's see, who else? I don't think we've said a specific prayer for all the parents yet. So maybe we'll do a prayer for parents. For all the parents that are home with their kids and are trying to figure out what to do to keep their kids occupied. Not in a bad way, just like kids are going to get bored being inside a lot. So for all the parents trying to figure out how to help their kids deal with school, how to help them deal with stress, a prayer for all of the parents that are doing their best out there. Oh, yes. Jay says, I just got here, so I don't know if this has been done yet, but prayers for teachers like my mom who are trying to help their students, even though they can't see them face to face. Yeah, Jay, we did light a candle for teachers already, but I'm going to light a special one for your mom. Yes, for all the teachers that are having trouble figuring out the best way to talk with their kids. And I was thinking about this earlier too, like paraprofessionals and counselors who are going to have a hard time making sure the kids are okay if they can't see them, or if they can only see them, in a very, very small window. So a prayer for Jay's mom and for all the teachers trying to figure out the technology thing. Bear Hug says, a prayer for performers, service workers, etc., who are worried about income and losing employment and security at the moment. Yes. For all the artists, for all of the people that make all the things that make us laugh, and we need them right now. Yeah, there are a lot of places that are doing some really cool fundraising work for people in these industries, and Godspeed, because it's good stuff and we need it. So prayer for all of the people that are in any sort of service industry job, and for performers and for entertainers and all the people that help us sort of laugh our way through some of this when we need to. Well, that's where I'm going to stop for now. But if you have more prayers that you want a candle lit for, do put them in the chat and we will get them too. I thought I'd go ahead and read us a couple of response prayers. So, in my tradition, we have this, we're currently using this nice cranberry hymnal. We call it the cranberry hymnal, or the the ELW. But it's got a bunch of prayers in it, so I thought I would say a couple for us. So I'm going to, at the end of each prayer petition, I'm going to say, God in your mercy, and then you all can just say, hear our prayer. So that's pretty easy. I just say, God in your mercy, and every time I say that, you say, hear our prayer. Super easy. So, God of creation and spirit of love, we come before you today with all of these prayers, holding all of these people in our hearts, all these people who are part of our community, who are doing their best. We bring them all before you today. We come before you ourselves with all of the things that we are concerned about, and all of the worries that we have, and all the needs that we have. We come before you and we ask you to remind us of your presence, to remind us that you are always with us, and that we can always rejoice in your presence because you're always there. God, in your mercy, hear our prayer. O God, where hearts are fearful and constricted, grant courage and hope. Where anxiety is infectious and widening, grant peace and reassurance. Where impossibilities close every door and window, grant imagination and resistance. Where distrust twists our thinking, grant healing and illumination. Where spirits are daunted and weakened, Grant soaring wings and strengthen dreams. God, in your mercy, hear our prayer. God of justice, we remember before you those who suffer want and anxiety from lack of work. Guide the people of this land so to use our wealth and resources that all people may find suitable and fulfilling employment and receive just payment for their labor. God, in your mercy, hear our prayer. God of wisdom, your Son came among us as a teacher. Send your blessing on all who are engaged in the work of education. Give them clearness of vision and freshness of thought, and enable them to train the hearts and minds of their students that they may grow in wisdom and be prepared to face the challenges of life. God, in our mercy, God, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Triune God, whose will it is that humans live in community, bless family life everywhere and fulfill all homes with respect, joy, laughter, and prayer. Strengthen the commitment of partners to each other, that they may mirror your covenant faithfulness, and pour out your Spirit on all children, who may taste your unconditional love. Empower all family members to live in your grace and forgiveness. God, in your mercy. Gracious God, none who trust in your Son can be separated from your love. Give to those who live alone peace and contentment in their solitude, hope and fulfillment in their love, and joy and companionship in their relationships with others. God, in your mercy. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, maker of heaven and earth. From everlasting you are God, our dwelling place in all generations. You are the source of holy wisdom and the fountain of all truth. We give thanks to you for the elders among us. We are graced by their wisdom. We are touched by their knowledge and faith. Bless them, O God, as they are a blessing to us. Pour out your Spirit, that our elders may continue to dream dreams and testify to your salvation. May we find inspiration in their years of faithfulness. May we follow their example by serving you with steadfastness and singleness of heart. God, in your mercy. God, we bring all of these petitions to you, knowing that you hear us wherever we are, in every place, at any time, alone or together, at night when we're lying in bed and our brains won't stop running, or during the day when we're going about all the things that we do, trying to figure out the best way to spend our days. God, thank you for your presence, and be with us now and forevermore. Amen. Thanks for being here with me, y'all. This was really nice to just have a little bit of time to breathe, a little bit of time to light candles. I hope you found it helpful as well. We'll probably do another one of these maybe at the beginning of next week, maybe on Sunday. I'm not sure yet. This is kind of an as-needed practice, so thank you for being here. And keep an eye on this channel, on the Transmission, TMC, YouTube and Facebook, and Twitter, and we'll let you know when the next one's happening. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and that you can find ways to bless others. As we are blessed, we can also bless others. So find ways to see the helpers and be the helpers, I think, is good advice. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.